I'm live.
You are live.
Call the meeting to order, and I guess we can check on the technical aspect, whether Councillor Hansby's not with us, but Councillor Bill Karsten, you wish to check your audio and video?
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I believe my audio is on, and I see all of our pictures, so I think everything's set in this end. Thank you, Madam Chair.
You're welcome. Councillor Austin.
Thank you, Ms. Chair. As far as I can tell, everything's a-okay here. It's good to have some rain coming down.
It is. And the drive-in was pretty good too. Councillor Mancini.
Finally here, they finally logged me in.
Perfect.
Okay. Coming from District 2.
Yeah, coming down the street.
You check your audio video is good. And Vice Chair Councillor Mancini.
Madam Chair, good to see everybody. Nice to have the rain, though. As you can see behind me, it's still sunny in Shuby Park.
It's going to start getting less green if it doesn't get rain. And I know we have staff at the meeting. There's Josh Judah, which we saw there, Maggie Holm, Thea Angel, Rick Brown, Steve Higgins, Steve McDougall, and Shane Blyton. And so can I have someone to move the approval of the minutes of August 6th and 19th?
So moved,
Nice.
Madam Chair.
Second the minutes, Bill Karsten.
Second by Councillor Karsten. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Approval of the order of business and approval of additions and deletions. Krista, do you want to take it from there?
Yes, Madam Chair. We do not have any additions or deletions on our end, but I believe Councillor Karsten may have some change to the order of business.
Yes, I do, Madam Chair, if I can go now. Thank you so much. Thank you, Krista, for pointing that out. Unfortunately, folks, and you know that this entire week I'm in virtual board meetings, our first ever virtual board meetings with Federation of Canadian Municipalities. So I have an executive committee call in just 23 minutes. So I'm asking, please, for this committee or this community council to move forward the items that I indicated to you, Madam Chair, yesterday, and that is, first of all, I guess I don't need to move up the item
8.1.
right,
No.
that's consideration. So what I would ask moved up before the public hearing is actually the item 13.1.1, and that's the first reading of the rezoning of the PID 41453945 in Cow Bay. And I'd also ask that the motion 14.1 to allow staff to look at various options regarding Silver Sands Beach be moved up as well, please.
So we'll put 13.1 and 14.1 just before the public hearing.
Excellent. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you. And now may I have, if there's no further adjustments, have a motion to approve the order of business?
I move the new order of business as
The
presented.
amended.
Thank you.
Yep.
The amended order of business. Thank you.
Second.
Second, Councillor Austin, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion's carried, and we have an agenda. So now I don't have any business arising out of the minutes or declarations of conflict of interest. Anyone? None. Motions of reconsideration or rescission, none. And deferred business is 8.1.1 fence located at 470 Dyke Road. We put the motion on the floor, or is there a presentation from Mr. Brown?
No, I think we just put the motion on the floor. The staff report is straightforward. If I could take the floor, Madam Chair.
Sure.
Okay, thank you. The motion is regarding a fence located at 470 Dyke Road, which is a salvage yard which has been incredibly enhanced over the last year and a half. And the motion is that.
Are you adding that to the motion?
No, just a little preamble. That Harbor East Marine Drive Community Council approved the request to construct fencing in excess to 6.5 feet in height at 470 Dyke Road, Cow Bay. So move.
Seconded in the muted, Councillor Mancini. And continue on, Councillor Carson.
Yeah, thank you very much, Madam Chair. Again, the report is straightforward. this is allowing that business to be in excess of 6.5. However, I've seen the new design of how things are laid out there in terms of a neat, orderly fashion. I've had no complaints about this property since the new owner has in fact really done a great job in tidying up, cleaning up, and this little height and fence will do nothing but enhance the property.
Okay. Rick, did you want to add to it? Because there was you said there was somebody that had called. Was there somebody that was calling in on this? I'm not sure. It's not a.
Yeah, Mr. Giles, the next door neighbor, and the owner of the current owner of the property is wanted to be online for this presentation and for the vote, I believe. I'm not sure if Mr. Giles wanted to speak to it right now or not.
I am here as we speak.
So I guess if you had something to say about the application, about the fence, then I guess Madam Chair may let you speak now.
Fantastic. I'll be short and quick with it. I just wanted to bring a couple things to your guys' attention. My name is Craig Giles. I'm speaking on behalf of Wayne and Lorna Giles this evening. Just a couple of things that I wanted to bring up. We're more than happy with the fence. As the shared purchase agreement from our sale of 470 Dyke Road had obligated Mr. McDonald to complete that fence between our two property lines. The only concern that we have is in attachment 2. It shows where the fence has already been completed, but with our shared purchase agreement, it states that Mr. McDonald has to build a fence basically from the front pin by the road to the rear property pin. So our biggest concern would be, we'd like to see that permit. If you guys approve this, we want to make sure that it's extended to that total property line. That way we don't have to try to get new permitting later on down the road when Andrew completes his part of the arrangement. We just don't want it delayed, basically.
Okay. Councillor Carson, I don't know who's not on mute, but I'm getting some not feedback, but background noise, so I'm not sure what it is. Just want to do. Councillor Carson, you wish to speak?
Probably the clerk's office.
Okay, thank you. It's hard to hear, Councillor Mancini. Is that what you're saying?
I can't hear Bill. Bill's mute. You're on mute, buddy.
His lips were moving, so I figured we were waiting for him to speak.
My apologies. I did turn to mute when I heard the background noise. So Rick Brown, certainly, sir, if you wish to weigh in to the Giles folks, I would suggest that I've talked to Andrew, and that is my understanding, is that this would cover the entire length of the fence from the front pin. But, you know, we can't, as I understand it, Rick, in this, we can't enforce that. All we can do is allow the extra height. Anything in terms of between you and the new owner, that would be a civil matter. We can't dictate by this motion that he has to build to the pin or to the front of the property line. But I do believe that this particular motion allows him to do so. Correct, Rick? Yes,
the drawing that was submitted shows it to the front pin.
Yes.
And to the back pin. So
that's correct.
I think when you approve this, if you do, it would include that. But we can't, like you say, we can't enforce that to happen.
Exactly. Yeah. So we're allowing, we're setting the stage or the process in place to allow it to happen by this motion.
Correct. Yeah.
Thank you. Because the reason this is before us is you're asking for permission to go higher with the fence. That's what's before us. Councillor Hensby.
Yeah, I just have a quick question in regards to future maintenance and obligation and sightliness of it. So it'll be the full responsibility of the property owners putting it in to do that and keep it up to a standard that's acceptable to the community. because sometimes these large fences get erected and sometimes not maintained very well. They can get very discarded. So hopefully the responsibility of the property owner is to keep it in a reasonable fashion.
Yeah, I believe that would be part of municipal compliance, unsightliness if that did happen. But we're hoping that the owner will maintain it properly.
That it, Councillor Hensby? Thank you. Seeing no further questions, I'll call for the question on the motion. I want to thank Mr. Giles for calling in. Call for the question on the motion.
Question.
All in favor?
Aye.
Contrary minded? Motion is passed. Now on to notices of tabled matters. There's none, but Councillor Carson requested that 13.1 be on the agenda at this time. Councillor Carson.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. So this is case 21813, and the motion is as follows: that Harbor East Marine Drive Community Council 1 give first reading to the proposed amendment to the land use bylaw for Eastern Passage Cow Bay as set out in attachment A of the staff report dated July 20, 2020 to rezone a portion of PID 414553 945 Cow Bay from the P2 Community Facility Zone to the RA Rural Area Zone and schedule a public hearing. I so move.
And seconder, please. Second, Councillor Hensby.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. The only thing that I would add to this has been a file that's been long underway. I want to thank all of staff. My gosh, there's more staff people than I thought we ever had in planning that at one time or another had their hands or were involved in this file. So I want to thank staff, number one. I want to also point out that for my colleagues on Community Council and whoever may be listening, that several months ago, my intention was to, what I did was ask staff where this file was, with the hope of bringing not only first reading to this Community Council, but also the actual public hearing that I would very much have liked to have been a part of. And I did get a verbal that just the file was coming forward, but we never really connected the dots as to how much of it. And by the time I looked at our last Community Council meeting that this was coming forward, we have no other meeting after this. So I'm still pleased to nonetheless put this forward as first reading because that's something that's just going to save that bit of time after the pending election. But I would have very much liked to have been part of this process. So folks, it is first reading. Other than Councillor Nicol and I, we can guarantee we won't be back for this particular public hearing, but best of luck with it. I ask for your support in the first reading. Thank you.
Thank you. I see no other questions, so I'll call for the question. Oh, Councillor Hensby's got his index finger up. You're muted, sir.
Just a quick question on rezoning with this. I believe it may be related to the item 14.1 about possible alternative access points to the beach. With this rezoning and requesting for access to the property, I think there should be also some discussion about future access beyond the property to the beach as an alternative. I think there's an opportunity there that should be explored.
So that's not a question, that's just you're pointing that out. Okay, so that means when 14.1 comes up, you will not speak.
Call for the question on this, Madam Chair.
Question has been called. All in favor?
Aye.
Contrary minded? Motion is passed. Back to you, Councillor Karsten, for 14.1.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. And again, I appreciate my colleagues' agreement to move these items before the public hearing. 14.1, the Harbor East Marine Drive Community Council requests staff to review all options for potential new entrants giving access to the Silver Sands Beach in Cow Bay. I so move. And then I'll speak after I get a seconder.
I saw Councillor Mancini's hand go up first, so it's been seconded. And are you asking for a staff request?
Yes, it is actually staff report.
Okay.
It's staff. So actually, this was written, a few weeks ago. So it could request a staff report for staff if that makes it clear.
Just a staff report to review all options.
Thank you for that, Madam Chair. So could the clerk so note, please, because that is something I did notice late last night. So it should actually read, request staff report for staff to review all options. Thank you. Thanks for that.
Krista, are you, I don't know, Krista, for a level of comfort, if you can put that motion in the chat.
I'm just trying to get the chat to work for me to put it in there. So it should be there in a minute.
Okay.
So, as long as my seconder looks at that as a friendly amendment, I'm fine with that friendly amendment.
He's thinking about it.
It's not there yet. I'm just reading the motion. So,
Nope.
Yeah, I'm fine with that, Madam Chair.
I believe Robin Dean was able to get it for me.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you very much, Councillor Mancini. So folks, look, this is very, very straightforward. Councillor Hensby and I talked about this last evening. Councillor Hensby, I agreed with you then that on the other file, when Community Council looks at that particular public hearing, Community Council can make suggestions. There is absolutely nothing, colleagues, other than the best interest of the community at heart here. Nothing but the best interest here other than the best interest of the community. You know, there has been some contentious emails on the subject, but again, I just assure the community that when staff come back with this particular item, it'll come back in the form of a staff report. I've been emailing anyone that's contacted me. He's got a full explanation. And the bottom line is that the staff report will outline everything that's currently happened in that particular easement, with that easement. It'll touch on coastal erosion that's affected the HRM-owned property at the very end of the easement. It will talk about other options. There was an option with our parkland planner, I don't mind mentioning his name, Gary Young, who's been simply outstanding when it comes to this issue in terms of dedicated so much of his time to answering emails, answering questions, meeting with 3 residents on site yesterday. A potential suggestion was made that will be looked at. I have that confirmed in an email from Gary. So look, you know, this is something that I will tell you and the listening, this has caused me some grief. I don't mind saying that for the first time in a long, long time, my name has been certainly used not in a proper and intended way. And you know, those that know me know that I have nothing but bring integrity to this job, and for members of the community, a small handful to believe otherwise, I will not, quite frankly, put up with it. So that isn't a threat, that's just a promise. So look, you know, I didn't mean to go on that long. This is for a staff report, and I ask your support. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you for all the emails. I have read them all, and I believe all of our members of Harbor East have as well. If they have any further questions, now would be their time. I don't see any coming up.
And they've all been answered, Madam Chair.
Yes, and thankfully. And so we are well informed, and thank you. And so I have someone call for the question.
Call for the question.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Contrary minded? Motion has passed. So I believe now is the time that we can go to our public hearing, 10.1.1. We have a presentation from Mr. McDougall.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of Community Council. My name is Dean McDougall, a planner with HRM. And I'll just wait for my slide deck to pop on the screen. Great, thank you. So I'll be presenting for the public hearing for case 21951, which is a development agreement application for 1000 Micmac Boulevard in Dartmouth. Next slide, please. So the applicant is Armor Group Limited, and the location is 1000 Micmac Boulevard in Dartmouth, as I mentioned. And the proposal is for a 15-story multi-unit residential building located on the lot. Next slide, please. Here are some images that provided a little bit of site context. So the property is located adjacent to Micmac Mall. It's shown in red on both images. On the image on the left, you can see the circumferential highway cut diagonally from the top to the right side of the image, and Lake Pinook and Micmac too, or the bodies of water you see. Another reference point for some might be the Brightwood Golf Course that's located on the bottom left-hand side of the left-hand image. So the property straddles the low-density residential neighborhood known as Creighton Park to the south west, and then on the high-density commercial developments located on the Horizon Court and Micmac Boulevard. Next slide, please. This is the subject site seen from Micmac Boulevard as if you're coming down from Maybank Park. And so the subject site would be directly in front of us. Those power pole lines you see there would be the side property line. And the yellow arrow is the proposed access. Next slide, please. This is another image of the site today. It's seen at the Horizon Court and Micmac Boulevard intersection. And again, the site access is shown in the yellow arrow. Next slide, please. So the current zoning on the property today is high order residential 1 and 2. It's dual zoned. The site of where the property or the building is proposed would fall under the HR2 zone. So high-rise building form is permitted on the subject site. In addition to the residential uses permitted, the high order residential zone allows opportunities for work-live units, professional offices, and a range of commercial uses. So this application is being considered under the transition policies of the center plan. So policy 10.25 enables complete development agreement applications to be considered under the policies that were in effect at the time of the application being submitted. And it was submitted prior to the first publication of council's intent to adopt the center plan. So this application was deemed complete in the fall of 2018, which would be a year before the ad was issued, so it therefore qualifies. So the enabling policy, so the policies that were evaluated for this application is we're under the Dartmouth Municipal Planning Strategy and Land Use Bylaw. Enabling policy IP5 of the Dartmouth MPS, which requires any residential apartment building with 3 units or greater to go by development agreement. So the intent of the policy is to require agreements for apartment buildings to ensure adequate design, land use compatibility, landscaping, and servicing. Next slide, please. Sorry, I forgot to say next slide. I just covered that slide. Next slide, please. So slide 8, policy consideration. The policy requires council to consider the following in rendering their decision on a development agreement. So the policy has sort of a checklist, so to speak. And it requires council to look at things like height, design, and scale with respect to the compatibility of the neighborhood, adequacy of the controls to reduce potential conflicts, landscaping and amenity space, and infrastructure capability. So sewer, water, roads, transit, things like that. Next slide, please. This is the proposed site plan. So there is a proposed subdivision as part of this application. I think actually the subdivision application is within our land development and subdivision team. It's on their desk now and it's moving through the process. So the proposed subdivision would be what's outlined in the red boundary there. That would be the new lot, which the building will be located on. And you can see here the podium, which is outlined in the light gray, and the tower, which is outlined in the darker gray. Not shown is the underground parking, which is the agreement requires a minimum of 100 spaces to be provided in underground parking. And then the surface parking is capped at about 20 spaces. Next slide, please. This is the proposed landscape plan. So as you can see, a significant amount of the landscaping on the grade is proposed, or on the ground is proposed to blend the grounds into the existing surroundings, which if anyone is familiar with the site, it's very treed. Next slide, please. This is the east elevation. So this would be the elevation that would face the interior of the lot. So the existing Kingswood development. You can see the 2-story podium and then the 13-story tower above it. The ground floor units, they're sort of outlined in red. They are, the agreement allows for a commercial residential flex there. So those units are permitted to go to commercial or any permitted use within the HR2 zone. Next slide, please. This is the elevation that will face Micmac Boulevard. So to provide like an eyes on the street and an interaction with this street that's sort of lacking there now, there's 4 units that are required to face Micmac Boulevard. And here again, these 4 units that can be those residential commercial flex that I mentioned. Next slide, please. This is the south elevation. So this will face the rear of the lot. This would be where the underground parking entrance would be. And next slide, please. And this is the west elevation. So this is the elevation that would face Maybank Park. Next slide, please. In terms of public engagement and feedback, the level of engagement completed was consultation achieved through signage at the site, on the site rather, a website, mail out notifications, and a public open house, which was held on November 27th in 2019. So feedback from the community generally included the following. So traffic was a concern, both for Micmac Boulevard and also Creighton Ave. And there's a mix of opinion on the building's compatibility with the neighborhood. So some thought it was compatible while others did not. In terms of the numbers of notifications, 230 notifications were mailed out. 19 people attended the open house in November 2019. We had about 1,200 web page views. So just to go further on that, those web page views are unique views. So it's not one person going on and hitting refresh 1,200 times. It's individual IP addresses. And then the last is the letters and emails received, and that was 4. Next slide, please. So just some key aspects, a summary of the proposed development agreement. It requires the max height of 15 stories, or 47 meters. Approximately 148 residential units, 40 of which are to be 2-bedroom units. The 4 residential units that have direct access to Micmac Boulevard is required, and the option to flex the ground floor units to commercial spaces provided in the DA. 820 square meters of amenity and landscape space is required, and the existing Kingswood building is to remain unchanged on the remaining subdivided parcel of land. Next slide, please. Non-substantive amendments. Just a quick recap, a non-substantive amendment is a change to the agreement which can be made without a formal public hearing like we're having here tonight. Instead, Community Council could authorize this change by resolution. And so the agreement allows for a couple different non-substantive amendments. They are changes to the landscaping, so the landscaping plan I showed, if they want to replace trees and shrubs, stuff like that. Changes to the architectural requirements, so if they want to change the materials provided, that would be a non-substantive amendment. And then changes to the commencement and completion dates of the required in the DA. Next slide, please. I do want to quickly provide some additional info. So since the report was authored, we had some additional information submitted regarding the impact of the development on the Lancaster Woodlawn Micmac intersection. So HRM Engineering have confirmed that the applicant's findings that the proposed development will operate within the capacity limits of that intersection. So my staff report does talk about possibly interim improvements being required. Those are not going to be required. This will operate within the current capacity of that intersection. And next slide, please. And secondly, possible active transportation trail development. So there's currently an informal pedestrian connection across the privately owned property, and it's shown here in this image in the red arrow. Now, the importance of this pedestrian connection was identified by residents during the public engagement. This informal connection obviously crosses private property, so HRM cannot require this connection be maintained as a condition of the development approval. However, as part of the building program, the applicant has proposed to alter the grade of a small portion of the steeply sloped HRM parkland abutting the site, so the Maybank Park, which would be where the yellow arrow is, to allow for the temporary construction easement for their equipment and material storage during construction. And in the conclusion of that easement, the applicant has proposed to alter the grades in that area and return the area to HRM in a condition that would enable a multi-use trail at this location. So if constructed, the trail would result in a formalized connection from Micmac Boulevard to the dead end of Creighton Avenue, entirely on public property without any encroachment on public land. And it would be active transportation, right? Bike, walking, such as that. I just want to quickly note again, though, that these improvements cannot be required as part of the development agreement. It's technically on lands that won't be aren't included in the agreement. So this agreement just enables, provides flexibility for that grade alteration and the building placement adjacent to that property line, so that formal review and conversations can happen at the building permit stage regarding that the possible formal trail connection. Next slide, please. So in conclusion, staff recommend that Harbour East Marine Drive Community Council approve the proposed development agreement as set out in attachment A of the staff report dated July 31st, 2020.
Thank you, Dean. I do have a few questions. Councillor Austin.
Hey, thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Dean, for the presentation. So I was jotting down a couple things as you went through. The power lines, are they on the applicant's property or are they on our property? Is that
both?
Who has the power line easement?
It's actually both.
Both.
So yeah, that's right. The easement, correct. I think it's so 6 feet on one side and 12 on the other. I can't quite remember which way it is, but it straddles both. And the applicant can speak to this later, but I think part of the proposal and conversations with Nova Scotia Power is to relocate or bury those power lines.
Okay, thank you. The traffic woodland, I think you covered. I did get a question from some residents about the potential for unmarked graves and the former church that was related to the Black Nova Scotia community that was here. I believe that was on the other end of the whole Armour swath of property there. Can you confirm whether that is in fact the site or whether it's elsewhere?
Sure. Yeah. So this part of my initial research was just that, and from my research, this isn't the right spot. The church and graveyard, we're located closer to the Glen Manor Drive intersection, so further south. And it was during the development of the King's Arm apartments in the 70s. Those are the 2-story townhouse multi-units there. The remains from the original graveyard were uncovered at that point in time in the 70s and were relocated to the Christchurch Cemetery in downtown Dartmouth. And the name of the driveway through King's Arm was renamed to United Ave in 2019, I believe, 2018, 2019, to reflect the history of the site. So the subject site is located north of that. It's actually most likely located on or adjacent to the old city dump, actually.
Yeah, that was my understanding too, with the geotechnical work that was done when we were looking at the at Maybank as a possible 4-pad location. Last one, I did get a number of correspondences regarding what construction looks like. Maybe this is something the applicant can touch on when they do theirs. About temporary parking and tree retention on the property. What is the landscaping requirements in terms of existing trees?
So the DA requires as much retention of landscaping as possible. The site now primarily located on, it would be located on a surface parking lot. So where the site's located, it's actually parking lot. The only trees are really adjacent to Micmac Boulevard. There's a strip there, and those are intended to be retained, but there will be some loss because we are trying to encourage the building front Micmac and have a walkway out into the street. So some will remain, some will be replaced and augmented, but the majority of the treed area is actually off of the subject site.
I was more meaning like the construction mitigation, right? I understand they're expanding their surface parking off-site as part of how to accommodate this project with an existing building of tenants. Does that factor into this application, or is that just something that is within their rights to do that's separate?
That would be separate. So if there's any proposed additional parking, it would be off of the bounds of the DA, so the DA couldn't regulate that. It would have to, any surface parking lot installation would have to go by the regulations of the land use bylaw, and they were required to get a permit for that.
Okay, thank you for that. I believe the land use bylaw requires parking to be screened and et cetera,
That's
et
right.
cetera. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mancini. Are you
Yeah,
muted?
sorry, I was just muted. Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for the presentation, Dean. A couple of questions I have. I may have missed it. Under the current policy, there is no change. The 15 stories, that's permitted under this current policy. Is that correct?
Yes. Yeah, it's there is no height cap under the Dartmouth policy, which is what this application is being considered under.
So saying that, then there's no consideration or opportunity for any affordable housing in this building then?
That's correct. So yeah, the affordable housing, even though the lands are currently zoned under the center plan, they were unable to go through the old application process, which doesn't allow us to have the authority to request any affordable housing provisions.
Which is unfortunate, right? What a great opportunity at this location to be able to do that. So I have a question with regard to the how close to the property line. You had a slide up there. I think it was slide 19. Can you bring that slide back up? Or you were showing the trail?
Ask the clerk's office possibly if they can do that.
Slide 19, Madam Clerk.
Hi, Councillor Mancini. I'm just pulling it back up now.
Thank you. So my question, Dean, is around, first of all, you talked about the trees that are there and you showed the slide on landscaping. And you alluded to the only trees that are on the back boulevard side only. So is there any, I'm looking for how close to the property line is the building, and is there any buffering that's going to be created along that property line?
Through your Madam Chair to the council, is it the property line that would abut the park?
Overall, I mean, I'm just trying to get an understanding of how much of an earlier slide you had. It showed the entire building and the structure, and this slide here, you talked about the trail coming from Micmac Boulevard going to Creighton Avenue, and I can see on Micmac Boulevard there are trees that you're keeping, but how far back is it set? Is there any buffering required?
Sure. Okay, yeah, so from the front property line, so Micmac Boulevard, the street, it's a maximum of 3.2 meters setback there.
Okay.
And then the building setback along the yellow line is a minimum of 0.66 meters. But that's a minimum, so there is flexibility provided in the development agreement for the building to be pushed further away. And then the right side property boundary, so that would be to the treat area at the lower left hand side of the image we currently see, 9.8 meters, or sorry, 6.8 meters would be the minimum there. And then the rear property line, so basically the rear parking located on the site, that would be 9.8 meters minimum.
And so there's, other than the landscaping that's going on, there's no other buffering that's taking place?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair.
You're welcome, Councillor Hensby.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a couple quick questions. Councillor Austin asked about the potential of archaeological significance. I guess the church was not there and the graveyard is not there, and possibly a dump could have been there. But the question is, if they do dig up something, what is the protocol for archaeological analysis and a halt on construction to determine what it might be?
So through you, Madam Chair, the councillor, there is a clause within the development agreement on just that. It's sort of a note saying, archaeological monitoring and protection. Hey, the province has these acts, the Special Place Act, that requires if during the construction there's anything found, anything, right, that could be of historical significance, they have to notify the staff there, and an archaeologist comes in and evaluates it, and then from there proposes a sort of path forward on how to remediate, remove, and what has to happen with whatever they find. So full stop on construction at that point in time too.
In regards to the trail and stuff, the way you said it sounds like we're going to get a corridor, but not a finished trail. So to what degree is the trail corridor going to be cleared and grubbed from trees and leveled off with rock and fill? Because they're going to have all the equipment there. They might as well prepare the corridor to a certain level and then transfer to the municipality. I assume, would it come to us as parkland dedication, or would it be part of a parkland fee in lieu of? I'm just kind of curious. And also with the informal crosswalk there now, or cross pathway, we have a crosswalk at that intersection. Will we envision another crosswalk being put up the street further, close to the Mayfield field?
Through you, Madam Councillor, or Chair, to the councillor. From my understanding, so the technicalities, the specifics of this proposed trail would be worked out at the building permit stage. From my understanding, though, is that the grades will be altered by the applicant to improve them. So right now it's quite a steep slope, so they'll bring those grades up, flatten it out, and so they can put their construction equipment on it for lay-by while they do their work, but then give it back in a state that would enable the gradings complete for a trail development between the two streets. In regards to the sidewalk, that is a detail that has to be worked out also at that point in time. I'm not sure if safety standards, if that's a good spot for a sidewalk. Engineering staff, the traffic authority would evaluate that then too.
Thank you.
Could I just ask a quick question? Just with regards to the undergrounding, is that going to be co-located with the trail, or is it just going from the green space to the building itself?
So the connection, the trail, the undergrounding of the parking?
No, undergrounding, sorry, of the utilities, of the power poles.
If that option is chosen between Nova Scotia Power and the applicant, then the trail would be on top of that underground.
That's what I figured.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, I don't see any further questions, so I will open the public hearing. And I'm inviting the applicant, I believe, is standing by to address council.
Hello.
There's Blaze in his deep voice.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, hi, everyone. Yeah, so we got Blaze Morrison, Manager of Development and Planning from the Armour Group sitting here, and also Scott McRae from the Armour Group. Good evening, councillors.
Good evening.
So I guess is the floor open for us to do a quick little presentation now? Is that correct?
Please proceed.
Right on. Thank you. So is I think I'm 30 seconds behind on the feed. So is the presentation up on your screens?
I see the picture that says the terraces at Kings Grove, case number 21951.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Well, thank you, councillors, and thank you, Dean. Thanks for the overview on the application. So yeah, thanks for taking the time to consider our application today. We are excited to present this application for the community, for Dartmouth, for the Creighton Park area. Next slide, please. A lot of you probably know about the Armour Group already. We are a homegrown local operation with all of our projects in the Halifax area, Halifax, Bedford, and Dartmouth. Most notably, you guys might be aware of the Queen's Mark project on the Halifax waterfront. We are committed to long-term developments and good quality design. Next slide, please. Most recently in Dartmouth as well, you might be familiar with the upgrades we made to the former Ramada Hotel, now the Delta Dartmouth. We think a nice high quality development in the Dartmouth area. Also own all the business campus around that particular project. So committed to Dartmouth as well. Next slide, please. So specifically this area, I think Dean alluded to the existing buildings in the area. Kings Wood and Kings Arms, which we're now calling Kings Grove, are buildings that were built by the Armour Group over 40 years ago. Next slide, please. So yeah, Kings Wood was built by Armour in 1979, and the following Kings Arms apartments over the next several years in the 1980s. So older buildings for sure, but we think they've weathered the test of time. Really nice design features to them, but most importantly, I think Dean, we talked about tree retention in Dean's presentation, but these developments are truly nestled amongst the trees, and we think they do truly blend in with the surrounding community, particularly Creighton Park. But Dartmouth is experienced and has experienced significant growth over the last 40 years, and this area is definitely an area that we believe should continue to see that growth. Its location is absolutely amazing, to be frank. Next slide, please. So Dean did this. I won't beat it over the head, but here we are. The little star is the location of the proposed development in the parking lot next to the Y-shaped building, which is Kings Woods. But we've got Micmac Mall, the Micmac Mall transit facility right across the street. So employment center, other large-scale developments with Avonhurst Gardens and Horizon Courts. We're close to parks. Creighton Park School is just off the screen there at the bottom. Maybank Field. So it's a great location, kind of right in between the high and low density areas of the community. Next slide, please. And also, as you can see, located right, on the outskirts, but right in the center plan location. So we did make this application back in 2018. Sometimes these take a long time, but what we really tried to do in the design is not only consider how the building meets the rules at the time when we apply, but also always taking into consideration the center plan rules as they exist. So next slide, please. So let's get to the design. I won't focus too much, I guess, on the policy particulars that Dean went over. So we're going to talk about this new building particularly and why we chose kind of the height, the size, the mass, the materials. And the first thing we had to look at, of course, was our existing buildings and the context of the neighborhood. So when we look at Kings Wood on the photo right here, it's got some really good bones to it. It's got some nice vertical brick details. It has the metal on the roof, but ultimately what sets these developments apart is its integration with nature. So how do we apply some of those kind of design ideas into the next buildings? Next slide, please. So architecturally and also from an urban design and urban planning point of view, which is very much kind of seen in all of our policies and bylaws to this day, is we want to focus on a building that has a good solid base, a middle, and a top. The base provides human scale of townhomes. We have that on both the main entrance to the site and also fronting on Micmac Boulevard. A middle of the tower that does step back with rooftop vegetation that tries to break up the overall mass of the building, and a top that is again set back with lighter materials. Speaking of materials, we wanted to keep them real simple. We don't want to be too kind of flashy or kitschy, throwing on a bunch of materials that don't make sense. We want to use honest and authentic materials, so brick to mimic the existing buildings, metal siding like the existing building as well, and also some wood accent details. That's it, other than glass. And of course, landscape design is integral, integrated with nature, maximizing tree retention. We want to activate that street frontage, but not, we always kind of joke with Dean there, I don't want to use the word fight, but at a long time, we weren't really sure if we wanted to be right on the street, which is what the center plan wants, but also nestled farther back from the street because this area is largely defined by the trees. We think we found a nice happy medium there with the street frontage, and promote pedestrian connections and outdoor amenities. So without further ado, here's some nice flashier photos for you of the proposed developments from some more human scale perspective. So next slide, please. So as you can see, this is from the entrance of our driveway right at the intersection of Horizon Court. And you can see us looking up the building. You can see a sliver of the Kings Wood building on the left-hand side. You can see the townhouse frontage kind of with ground level access on the building, and the tower that, trying to fade away, but still with that solid brick material. Next slide, please. This is a zoom in of the front entrance. As you can see, it's really nice brick detailing. So right here, you can really see that it's just three materials. Brick is the dominant material with some nice accents with some relief and protrusions in the brick. a white Apollic metal sidings that try to break up the overall mass and color, and also some nice wood detailing around the entrances. Next slide, please. This is just another zoom out, unrealistic angle, but you can kind of see on the right-hand side some interesting features along Micmac Boulevard that I'll talk to in a bit more detail about how we're trying to address that street. Next slide, please. This is just another angle as if you're in maybe the top floor of our Kingswood building, what you'd be looking at on this development. So next slide, please. So as you can see from those slides, it is quite a simple building in its form, but we think in its simplicity, it breeds some elegance in that base, middle, and top approach. But landscape design is really what we wanted to promote here. So we call this building the Terraces because of its curb appeal along Micmac Boulevard. Micmac Boulevard, from the corner of our building down to our front entrance, there's a grade differential of about 20 feet. So it's very difficult to address that with townhomes and also landscape design. So we think we've come up with a creative solution from a landscape perspective and a design perspective to create that eyes on the street that's so important in the urban setting. We also added a unique feature we call a solarium and some garden plots that might be on that roof to act as a nice frontage and unique frontage to the street. We also, with our main street entrance into our building, try to create a bit of a curb appeal into our community, really enhance the community. A lot of the neighbors in this particular development are in fact our own tenants of Kingswood and Kings Arms. We want to really enhance the community feel as they drive into their home. And the multi-use trail, so thanks Dean, you talked about that one. So we've got some images on this. So yeah, it's not part of the DA, but speaking quite frankly, in order for us to excavate at the backside of the building, we have to get encroachments with the city to do that work. So once we reinstate that work, yes, it'll be fully reinstated with a multi-use trail, graded, paved exactly as HRM Development Engineering wants it to do, or how they want it designed, and that connection will in fact be made. So it benefits us, benefits the city, benefits the whole community at the end. So next slide, please. So I won't talk about this, Dean. I think I already did a bit of the landscape plan here, but you can see some trails with direct connection to Micmac Boulevard and the proposed multi-use trail connecting from Micmac Boulevard to Creighton Avenue. Next slide, please. This is looking down Micmac Boulevard. You can see some of the townhouse style frontages to give that kind of activity on the street. And we have that glass structure kind of behind the trees there that is our proposed solarium. So essentially a greenhouse on our rooftop that is going to be an added amenity for our tenants. Essentially just a place to sit, lounge, grow some plants, read, what have you. Next slide, please. So this is a view from Micmac Boulevard looking down to Creighton Avenue. So this is what we envisioned this multi-purpose trail looking like and feeling like. What changed from the original application is, or not original application, our original design, is we actually had parking on level 2. But with this kind of revelation that we could have, in fact, a multi-use trail, we eliminated the parking from level 2, put in units. So it's almost like we have townhouse units right onto the park. So there's still a little bit of separation there, a little bit nice screening, but it adds this really nice activation on essentially now all 4 sides of our building. So about half of those units on the back side can actually have walk-up style units. The grade then has to slope down and we can't get that activity. Next slide, please. So the building program, yes, a 15-story building with about 147 units. Over 40% of the units are 2 bedrooms or greater. Next slide, please. So I think Councillor Mancini talked about affordability. So no, this development is technically not providing affordable housing for the program, but we are in fact committed to providing affordable style housing and accessible style housing. We are working on a financing program that requires us to provide 20% of our units, and sorry I wrote this wrong, but 20% of our units must have rents that represent no more than 30% of the median household income in the area. So we're actually, I think, providing over 70% of our units to do so. Accessible, we have over 16% of our units are accessible as well. Next slide, please.
30 seconds.
Say that again, sorry?
Someone's timing you.
Yeah, 30 seconds.
30 seconds, all right. Lots of amenities, indoor and outdoor. And if you skip a couple slides, go to slide 24, please. So a lot of questions about parking. So the DA doesn't contemplate parking area A, D, B, or C, but in our balance for our existing tenants who desire parking, but they also desire vegetation. This is a plan that we've come up with that we think kind of balances both of those to give our tenants the parking that they need in the interim, but also the end goal of having enough parking for both buildings on our site that still maximizes the amount of tree retention on the site. So I guess I'm probably running out of time there, but I think that's basically the end of the presentation there. I was going to talk a bit about what we've done with consultation, but we're around obviously for more questions and answers and however we can help. So thank you.
There are questions. Blaise, from Councillor Mancini first.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Blaise. Mr. McCray, good to have you here also. You know, the location is great. Full disclosure to everybody, my mother lived in Kingswood for a number of years. She's not there now, but it was a great apartment building. Yes, it's older, but it was well maintained. And, you know, from my mom and her neighbors, they really enjoyed the location and how well maintained the building was. And, you know, Mr. McCray, you do have a reputation of building good buildings. It's so good to see this one. You know, I love the location, the greenhouse concept, the trail, you know, the removal of parking level, that change you talked about, Blaise, is great also. I'm wondering, can you back Blaise's presentation again and go back to slide 20? Because my question was around the affordable housing piece, and I heard you acknowledged my question about it, and I'd love to hear from Mr. McCray on this also. I need you to explain once again the 20% of the units will be 30% of the income. Could you explain? Can you give me a sense of generally, you know, what's the range of the rent? Help me understand that 20% of 30% of the income. Can you help me understand that, Blaise, first, and then I wouldn't mind asking a question of Mr. McCray.
Yeah, I'll take the first bit of that, Councillor Mancini, and it's Scott McCray here. And it's great to hear about your mom and Kingswood. And as an aside, both those buildings are getting older, Kingswood and the Kings Arms area. We've been sort of holding off, waiting for this construction, and as part of it, it's not part of this development agreement, but for Dartmouth councillors, both those buildings are going to be completely renovated. We wait till our construction team is there on site, so we're going to be doing that work at the same time. It's not part of this development agreement, but part of what we're doing with this, the terraces at Kingsgrove is, and we are pre-approved with the federal government, is that we are using the CMHC National Housing Strategy Program. So they've approved our financing for this. And so that requires us as a developer to meet various constraints in terms of affordability as defined by CMHC. It gets rather technical, so it's a little hard to go over in this format. But it is in essence what Blaise is just, they look at the median household income, they look at the average rents. In general terms, you're going to see rents tend to, for a certain portion of the building, 10 to 15% below. You must maintain a certain level of accessibility. There's also green standards in that program. It's a very favorable program for financing, but it is obviously providing the federal government some of those items that they want to do on their strategy. We have not really promoted that in the development agreement because we can't promise it, but I can tell you at least on this call that that is our intent and that we are approved for that program.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. McCray. You know, it's interesting. You probably are aware that we are in an election campaign right now, and when we're talking to residents, you know, the 1%. Some of you, yeah. Thanks for rubbing that in, Councillor. When we're talking to residents, you know, there's a lot of topics in discussion, but the affordable housing piece, the 1% vacancy rate we had prior to COVID-19 is quite concerning, and so it's good to see buildings like this being available, especially in Dartmouth. But the affordable housing piece is really a challenge, you know, Mr. McCray, and I'd like you're going down this avenue, but we need to partner with developers like yourself and other good developers and coming up with a solution, because even though it's not our mandate as a municipality, it's still an importance to our residents, and I think all of us here online today and the Harbour East councillors hear about it all the time and want to come up with a solution. So, No, I know this is clarification, Madam Chair, but if you would just allow me just a little bit leniency here. I'd like to hear
No, I
your,
will.
I'd like to hear from you, Mr. McRae, just very briefly, your thoughts on that and how do we go down this avenue of affordable housing with your development community? How do we come up with these solutions we need?
Well, I think I think the responsible developers see the issue, much as you hear it from your constituents, councillors. The fundamental problem, of course, is lead lag. When you think about how long even this application takes to get to this point and then for us to build, I think we all see it. And so that's probably one of the biggest issues is, of course, the lead lag between the problem and then the ability to truly build. My personal belief, and you can see us, I think we are, I'd like to think we're responsible developers. You can see us heading towards these programs that have been created. And so that would speak to the potential success. And so I think it is continuing to work with the federal and provincial governments to initiate these programs that incentivize developers to do it. What I like mostly about this affordable housing is it's only a portion. So we're creating, I think, places for people to live of all income brackets. And it doesn't isolate the individuals based on solely affordability. It allows them to move into an area, Creighton Park, established area that's, a wonderful place to raise family or retire or those sort of things. So we're seeing real changes in some of these federal programs that, to the extent that the city can accelerate planning for those type of things, or the province can assist. I think that's you can see we're starting to head in the right direction, and just accelerating that would be my opinion.
Thank you, Mr. McRae. Mr. Morrison, thank you also. Thank you, Madam Chair.
You're welcome. Councillor Austin.
Thank you, Ms. Chair, and thank you to the applicant for the presentation. Just two questions. The affordability piece. When you define the area, what goes into that? Like, what is the actual area where it's based on?
This is Blake Morrison speaking. It just comes down to census tracts with CMHC. So it is specific to the Dartmouth area, which I forget the name offhand specifically, but it is the kind of downtown Dartmouth area in the census tract. So they just use the StatsCan data on that front. So
would it take in sections of Dartmouth North, or is it limited to like the area around Micmac Mall?
No, it goes over. I'm confident that it does in fact go over kind of the Elbow Lake Road into Dartmouth North areas. I think this actually kind of creeps into some of downtown Dartmouth area as well, but it's a pretty large geographic area.
Okay, thank you. That's really good to know, because if you depending where you draw the line, you get very different results in terms of what actually the rents would be in that equation. I mean, certainly things along Lake Banook and Micmac Mall are more expensive than something over on Primrose or Pinecrest, right? Yeah. One other question, just the parking piece, where you've got it. I know there's a little. It's outside the scope of the development agreement, but I know it's of real interest to tenants in the buildings. What do those parking lots look like? Are they temporary? Are they finalized? Like, this is what you'll expand to that will then be the solution going forward? If you could provide a little more detail on that, please.
Yeah, for sure. So if you have the presentation still up, if you go to the presentation page number 24, please and thank you. So this little excerpt was actually, I think Councillor Austin, I shared it with you, but we did in fact send a brochure, if you will, a construction mitigation brochure, information brochure to all of our tenants, trying to outline construction timelines, what we're doing for parking, what we're doing for tree retention, what we're doing for dust control, mitigation, etc. Because parking and construction activities is very much in their backyard, so how are they going to live? So to answer your question, so parking area A, the blue dot, does exist today. Today, there are only about, I think, 13 parking stalls there today. So we've come up with a bit of a landscape design that only really impacts some grass areas and some sidewalk areas to increase to almost double that parking area. So we're basically just enhancing the front parking area to have more parking, but still keeping all the trees there as best we can. So that is an existing parking area. Parking area B is existing as well. So what we're going to do there is we're going to do that work, regrade that, clean up that parking area. And then we're going to fence around it for the construction side of the terraces, and that'll remain a permanent parking area for our tenants only, non-construction people. So tenants only will get area B. Area C will be a permanent parking area because we are going to have to, unfortunately, remove some trees at the back part of our property line. We're going to connect it actually to a parking lot that exists as part of the arms. Then we'll add some trails to the woods, of course, for accessibility. But because we're cutting down those trees, we're going to make that a permanent parking lot. And that's per the land use bylaw, parking lots in the rear of properties. So it'll comply from that front. Area D, part of our subdivision application, it's unfortunate we don't have it showing here, but the terraces is on one lot. We actually created 2 lots in our subdivision application for another lot that is generally shown where area D will be. So area D will be a temporary construction parking area for our tenants. In the future, that'll end up becoming another development lot subject completely to the HR2 zoning requirements. So that's our strategy as it exists today.
Thank you for that.
Thank you. I don't see any further questions. So, and I would review the public hearing rules, but I don't think we have anyone on the list to speak. Do we, Krista?
No, that's correct. We have no speakers.
So given that, I guess I will ask for a motion to close the public hearing.
Move to close public hearing.
Seconded.
Thank you.
Can we also acknowledge the correspondence that was received in regards to this?
I will go to the clerk, Krista, to acknowledge that.
Yes, under correspondence, we are going to note that it's received for item 10.11 as well as 14.1.
Thank you.
Which was distributed to members of Community Council.
Okay, and since there was no one to speak and you don't have any, councillors would not have any further points of clarification, so therefore I will ask for the area councillor to kindly put the motion on the floor. Thank you.
My pleasure, Ms. Chair. Just a second here, let me find it. I move that Harbor East Marine Drive Community Council 1 approve the proposed development agreement, which shall be substantially of the same form as set out in attachment A of the staff report dated July 31st, 2020, and 2, require the agreement be signed by the property owner within 240 days or any extension thereof granted by council on request of the property owner from the date of final approval by council and any other bodies as necessary, including applicable appeal periods, whichever is later. Otherwise, this approval will be void and obligations arising hereunder shall be at an end.
The seconder, Councillor Mancini. Thank you. Proceed.
Thank you, Ms. Chair. Thank you, Councillor Mancini. You know, when I look at this development, we're talking about an area in Dartmouth that already does have a degree of high density. I know the old Kingswood there fairly well myself. Dr. Draper was my dentist from the time I was 5 years old until he retired, and now it's Dr. Andre in there. And I did have the pleasure of meeting Councillor Mancini's mother on the doorstep when door knocking in there way back when. So it's a building I've been into a lot. And I think this will fit in well with the existing collection of development we have in the area when we're thinking about where we want to grow as a community. Next to a transit hub near an existing commercial kind of center. I mean, this is the sort of place where you want to see more development. I think it works for everyone in the community. Regarding the affordable housing piece, I mean, it would be lovely if we could do more for that. Through the center plan, we will have that housing fund coming forward that projects will have to pay into. But I think in the concern, like the most concern about affordable housing is on that deep affordability, because there are people who simply cannot pay the current rents. And there's no housing built that really is in the deep affordable end of any significant quantity in decades. And so that's where the crisis is most currently felt. But But it's not just there. I mean, with a 1% vacancy, we need all kinds of new housing, not just that deep affordability. We need units of all sorts. And so I think this project will be a good fit. It's in a good location. It does provide more housing, which we desperately need. And most of the complaints I've had about it, concerns that have come my way, have been in the variety of construction mitigation concerns, right? Like not wanting to, and I get it, living in a building like Kingswood for like 20, 30 years. I know there's a lot of seniors who call that building home. To go through the mess of construction, it's not going to be free. All you can do is mitigate those impacts as best you can, right? The concern about a parking lot, you can't use that to say no to another development on another section of property in the same area. So I hope the applicants are going to, it's in their best interest, these are their tenants, to do their best by them, because construction, there's no polishing that up to the point that it's not going to have any impacts. There will, of course, be some there during construction. I think the end product will be a good addition to the community, and that's the decision that's really before us, is what is that end point. And I think we're at a good place with where this is. So I will support it and would ask colleagues to do likewise. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Austin. I don't see any further questions in the chat, so I'll call for the question.
Question?
Thank you. All in favor of the motion?
Aye.
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 Contrary minded? The motion is passed. Thank you. Thank you to the applicant and all who participated. I guess you can hang up. So on to number 11, correspondence, petitions, and delegations. Madam Clerk, do you want to repeat the correspondence that you just said?
Sure, Madam Chair. Again, we have received correspondence for 10.11 and 14.1. This correspondence was distributed to the Community Council.
Thank you. Are there any petitions? Seeing none. Information items brought forward, none. We covered for 13.1. 13.2, members of Community Council, none. We covered 14.1. There is no in camera. There is no added items. Correct. And any notices of motions?
Madam Clerk?
Yes.
Madam Chair, rather, sorry, I apologize. I don't have a notice of motion, but before you end the meeting, I'd like to acknowledge this will be your very last Harbor East Marine Drive Community Council sitting on that side of the chair. We might see you on the other side. Thank you very much. As a colleague and a friend, it's been great to have you in the chair a couple of times since I've been so I think the rest of us were all very jealous that what direction you're going in. So
I thought you were going to make a notice of motion to kick me out.
yeah, well, we can do that too, yeah.
I think we should make a notice of motion of lifetime want to remember.
That's right.
It's been an honor, as you all know. I've told you all individually, and thank you. And I like being the chair, and thank you for giving me the opportunity, because I do like to run a tight ship.
What you do.
Thank you. The date of the next meeting is November 12th, and I wish you well, and motion to adjourn.
So move, second.
Night all.
Night. Thank you all.
Night.